Hey, this is Paul Coliani with GoPodcast.com. Today I want to show you the very first step I take when creating one of my shows. The Overwhelmed Brain personal growth show that I host goes through a huge production process, and there's a lot of steps involved. It's not just I'm going to interview someone, edit out a few ums and ahs, and then post it on iTunes or on Libsyn or whatever. But I'm going to take you through the first step of my process, which is creating the script, creating the outline. The outline I put in Google Docs. Everything I do when I'm typing any type of word processing goes into Google Docs. I've created a folder called The Overwhelmed Brain. And in here, I have a folder called Episodes. And in here, you'll see all the episodes I've already aired. And those are all folders within themselves. Sometimes I'll get PDFs and other documents from the person I'm interviewing, if I have an interview type show that time or episode, and I'll put it in this folder. So I keep all my files pertaining to a certain interview in these folders. However, this episode I'm working on is on depression, a very happy topic of depression. So I'll open up the depression folder. And I spoke to a person named Carla White. This is not a solo episode. This is one where I actually interviewed someone. So I have a certain outline that I follow when I interview someone as opposed to when I do a solo show. So before my interview, and I'm not going to get into this too much, I just laid out a bunch of questions that I might want to ask Carla. I never follow the exact guideline of questions, but I did create a bunch of questions just in case I needed them, and I asked a couple, but most of our conversation was pretty organic, so I just allowed that conversation to go where it went, and that's part of the document I have for creating this. Here you'll see my outline. I have a specific outline that I follow now. It took me a few months to actually create this outline, but I don't mind sharing it with you guys. The outline I follow is basically introduce my episode, and then I do a personal introduction after the music and the intro and tell you what the show is about. I might have a short comedy sketch or a monologue pertaining to the theme of the show. And then I talk about a personal experience with the subject of the show. If I have a personal experience with what I'm talking about, I'll share that. And then I transition to either, if it's a solo show, my talking points, or into the interview. And then after the interview, I summarize those talking points, and not after the interview, but whatever it is, I'll summarize those talking points that either we talked about in the interview or I talked about in my solo show. And then I have another random sketch, song, or quiz, or anything else pertaining to what you just learned in the show. And then at the end, I close the show. I mention subscribing to my weekly personal growth tips and to click on the free audiobook button or some other sponsored ad if I include sponsors. And then I actually follow the outline and write my script. Sometimes I have a general outline and sometimes I have a full-on script. And then in this case, I have kind of a bit of both. It's going to be scripted in the beginning, and then I'm going to have an interview playing, and then at the end it'll be scripted. So the reason I script things is so I never miss a point. There's a specific way I want to convey a message to the listeners. And it's really important that I script only because the message usually has something to do with how to fix a problem, how to heal, how to improve yourself in some way. And if I'm just talking randomly, I might forget a point. I might make a mistake or say something that's not right. And wording is very important when you are helping people through especially vulnerable places when they're going through their own personal growth. If I'm talking about depression and I mention the word, do or die, for example, do or die might, to a depressed person, might go, well, I guess I'll die. I mean, there's things that I have to be careful of in a personal growth show. So I'm being very careful when I script of how I word things. And this comes from my many years of being in hypnosis and being coaching and things like that. So I kind of know how to word things so it doesn't affect anyone negatively. But aside from that, let's see what I'm doing here. I create the script. I've got a song in this one, so that'll be fun. I'll be singing that in a minute. And I'm going through the guideline that I had at the beginning, A through whatever it was, H. And so I won't go through all this scripting, but I wanted to give you an idea of the very first step I take to create the questions for the interview, then record the interview, and then create a script around that interview. So when Carla found a way out of her depression, she had a story with that. She had things that she tried. And what I wanted to do is somehow incorporate the theme of the show and what she tried and what we talked about into the script pre-interview and post-interview. And this kind of ties everything together. So when you finally get to the interview, after I have my monologue, and then maybe a comedy skit or a song, and then we get into the actual interview, it all ties together. It's not just me going, I left the toothpaste cap off this morning, and I left my socks on the floor. I mean, it's not silly random stuff. There's actually everything I write has a specific purpose to help teach someone, to help them learn in another way. For example, if I have a comedy sketch in the middle, or a song, these aren't just fun things that I throw in there just for the heck of it. There's actually therapeutic value to the sketch or the song. And some people don't know how they're learning, but they're learning. And I like to add a little fun to how they learn. Now, your show, your podcast may not need therapeutic elements. Maybe you just interview people and you're having a good time with that. But I'm assuming if you're watching this, you want probably a higher caliber of show. You don't just want to throw out an interview online or on iTunes and just say, this is my interview, here is this person. You actually want to produce something special. And that's what I'm here to teach, is how to produce something special. I wanted to show you the first process in creating something special. Well, what I consider special. There's a higher production value that goes into every show that I create, and I want to convey and show you what's involved in making your show higher production, more valuable. Now, you may have the best content in the world, but if you have a loud background hiss in every episode, or your editing is not that great, or your music just cuts off instead of fades off, there's so many little pieces to a show that it is going to interrupt a listener. So there is a flow to a show that you want to create. And when you create this flow, people aren't interrupted. Their thought stream is continuous. It's flowing. And as long as you keep that flow, you keep listeners listening. No interruption, they don't stop, they don't walk away. If you're listening to your own show and you get bored listening to your own show, there's a clue. I listen to my own shows, and if I get bored, like the first 10 minutes, I'll listen to it and I'll go, all right, something's not right. I'm getting bored here. I will cut out huge chunks of script, huge chunks of recordings, and change it because I don't want the listeners getting bored. So I think I've talked enough. This is the very first step, and the first video in what I'm doing is creating an entire series so that you get an idea of how to create, or at least how I create, a high quality show, and how you can too. Thanks for watching. This is Paul Quiliani at GoPodcast.com. Now go podcast.